Over to Ajay.
Hi. I'm not sure whether you can hear me at the back. I'm Ajay. Do you like the screensaver?
Yes.
Yes.
Like APL, it's out of this world.
I'm worried about the guy, though.
I'm sorry?
I'm worried about the guy just going off the corner of the screen. He makes me feel insecure.
I'm sure he's not going to drop down because of gravity or whatever.
No, but where's he going to finish up?
I think on your CD, or maybe your 2000 CD, or the USB pen, or maybe both, you would find 3 documents. The first one is APL, the next generation. The other one is about LINQ. I'm not sure whether you would have heard of LINQ. LINQ is LINQ. There are several specializations within it. The one that I'll be talking about is linked to objects, which is, object is basically in-memory data. Nobody marketing APL has actually coined a phrase for how good APL is with LINQ, but the original LINQ is APL. Microsoft have created a whole new paradigm, if you like, for working with in-memory data, and maybe we could latch onto that, adopt the jargon, and find new opportunities for selling APL. The other one, my other topic will be to show you a few things about APL+Win. Now and then you will hear me speak about APL+Win as a legacy product, which may be a term that you wouldn't like. By legacy, I basically mean it's a Win32 product. Perhaps I could now go through the slides, and hopefully it will give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about, and some things will become clearer. If you have any questions, by all means stop me and ask. If you want to see me afterwards or in between sessions, by all means do. This bit of it is basically what I would call legacy. Win32, we are in a world where we have got unmanaged code. We have got, our software works with specific machine architecture. We've been through the debate of fat clients and thin clients. All our documents are workspaces, component files, are proprietary document formats. And now and then we want to look outside of APL and we use ActiveX or OLE. The future is .NET, where we're in the realm of managed code. We have got a virtual machine on the common language runtime which runs that code, and it is not tied to any specific machine architecture. Instead of fat and thin clients, we have got rich clients. And rather than proprietary documents, we have got open document format, which is basically XML. If you look at Office 2007, Microsoft have got several pathways into using it. You don't have to have Excel, for instance, to be able to work with Excel documents. You could use Open Office software development kit, and you can create the workbooks, worksheets, the graphs, anything that you can think of. ActiveX and object linking is going to carry on into the future. And on top of that, in the .NET world, in C#, we have got the interop technology, which is basically a wraparound ActiveX. The basic question that we have, that I have for you, is we can't change the past. In the present, we have got, depending on your point of view, the benefit or the curse of hindsight, and then the future. As I see it, the future is .NET. How quickly it arrives depends on your view about how long the present is. And given that the world's most popular application, Office 2000 or Microsoft Office, is a Win32 application, and it's got a huge legacy, much bigger than any of the APLs, I would guess that it's going to carry on forever. Until Microsoft does something about it, and they have created pathways for people to evolve. The past is where we make design decisions, so workspace, component files, The present is what you have, all your applications that you have developed. The cost has already been incurred. What you have got is a very valuable investment. And you need to do something about it to increase your returns on it. So how do you maximize your investments? Marketing alone is not going to do anything for you. You have, maybe you want to re-engineer it with different technology or better technology. The critical question there is who will pay for it. If you have a customer who wants a .NET version of the application and is happy to pay for it, there's no problem. But if there's nobody to pay for it, commercially it doesn't make sense to change anything. In the future, you would be asking somebody to make the right decisions. My own view is that there's too much that is proprietary about APL, which acts as a barrier to newcomers to the language. APL 2000 have got Visual Studio 2008 as the IDE for the brand new product, Visual APL. And this is the front screen that you would get when you initialize Visual Studio 2008. And you've got two options, Cielo Explorer for Visual Studio and Visual APL. This is from another PC. All the facilities, including, I particularly want to highlight this, where if anything is available in Visual Studio, it is available to Visual APL. Visual APL is a .NET language. It's a native .NET language. It works with Visual Studio 2008 as its development environment. It doesn't have a workspace. It will come as a big surprise if this is the first time you're hearing it. Over the years, a lot of people have maintained that index origin should have been 0 in APL. Visual APL gives you that. Index origin is 0 by default. If there is no workspace, you might be wondering what happened to interactive mode APL, which is where APL is strongest, because you can type in an expression, build your function, store your data, and eventually carry it into your application code. Cielo Explorer is your interactive session. You save all your, as I will be showing, all your code and your variables or objects inside script files. But the actual session, you can save it as a log, but the code will disappear as soon as you come out of Visual Studio. Visual APL is very compatible with APL+Win, but all the proprietary features of APL+Win, like its editor, component files, Quad WI, Quad WI is a Windows interface. All these features are optional. So if you started using Visual APL today, you have the option of either using it as APL+Win, but in a .NET world, or you could use it without the proprietary features, like component files. Visual APL is very closely aligned with the current .NET flagship language, which is C#. And in your Visual APL products, you can mix C# and Visual APL code all in the same function. APL, as you know, is a language which has got derived data types. The strongest weakness being that it doesn't have a datetime type of variable. It has numeric and character variables, irrespective of how we store it, scalars, vectors, and nested arrays. C# is very strongly typed. Visual APL can be either strongly typed, derived typed, or loosely typed, depending on the context you want to use it. How would you want to use Visual APL? Well, you could use it to build class libraries, in which case you would be using strongly typed variables. So you could write a library with Visual APL and have C# use it without any problems. You could use it to write ActiveX DLLs for Win32. That means for APL+Win, for instance, or to write an Excel add-in. It's also got a third method of using it, and that is what's been described to me, and I haven't investigated this one, is as a lightweight array engine. As I understand it, what that means is that it's another set of base classes, much like the .NET base classes, which you can incorporate in your Visual Studio projects, whether you're using Visual Basic for .NET or C#. And you would have the benefit of array processing almost as if you were in an APL environment. Or you could build a console application all in Visual APL. Which left out, how do you do a graphical user interface when you're using APL? And the recommendation is that you would use C# for the front end, in other words, a graphical user interface. And you would build today, if you were doing that, you would use WPF or Windows Presentation Foundation with or without Silverlight. This is where the rich client bit comes in. I did describe APL+Win as legacy, but by that I meant that it's a Win32 product. APL+Win is still a current product. Version 9.1 was released this morning. The version that I've been using, version 9, was released in March of this year. As APLs go, the way it handles Win32 APIs in the workspace is unique. I'll be showing you some features of that. It's got a very robust and versatile ActiveX interface. You can deploy APL+Win both as a server and as a client. So you could have APL+Win as a client being served by an APL session, or you could have Excel as a client served by an APL+Win session. Later on, I'll be showing you a C# project using APL+Win as a server. If you look at the APL 2000 forum, one of the constant questions being asked is, where is QuadNet? QuadNet is what Dyalog have had it for a long time. It's a bridge to the .NET base class libraries. The last version of APL+, introduced QuadNet as well. So from within the workspace, you can use the .NET base classes. APL+Win doesn't have that. The alternative is to use ActiveX technology to be able to access it. They also offer another product which is called Net Access, which also gives you a bridge into the .NET world. The basic difference between APL+Win and Dyalog and APL+, is that with Dyalog and APL+, QuadNet is in the workspace. With this one, you keep the .NET code separate from the workspace. You just use it as an ActiveX, almost as if you're using Excel. APL+Win is closely aligned with Visual APL. It has the same keyboard. And Visual APL uses Unicode. APL+Win doesn't use Unicode. So there are incompatibilities of that nature, and there are several of them. For instance, you can't read APL+Win component files because of this character mapping thing directly with the corresponding functions in Visual APL. But there are libraries that APL 2000 provide which will allow you to do that. So how would you ensure the future of APL? This is the technology I was talking about, LINQ. APL has always had LINQ, only we never called it LINQ. All that LINQ to object is, if you think of objects as in-memory data, like a huge array, LINQ has got a new jargon, and it has refocused documentation purely on managing data with relational operators. Microsoft have produced, they have a website where they illustrate how to use it with 101 examples. And there's a lot of talk about it. If you look at some of the examples, like if I mentioned partitioning operators, nested take while, that would probably not mean very much, but that's the jargon they have used. And all it is a less than equal to select in APL. The document that you will have on your CD, I have translated all the code that they have given for APL+Win, and I'll be showing you the workspace that with all the code in. I'm not sure where APL is going to go, but my own view is that APL is only one tool in a tool chest full of other tools. And the whole world thinks of applications not just as a workspace which has got everything in and nobody can look at it. For instance, an APL+Win workspace, I wouldn't be able to look at it unless I have APL+Win of the correct version. Likewise with Dyalog and likewise with APLX. I can't read a component file created by any of the APLs if I don't have that APL. The whole world thinks of applications as tiers. So you have the user interface, you have got the business logic, and you've got the data tier. People think of the data tier as databases, relational data. Any application that is database aware can look into it. The other point about ensuring the future is that documentation-wise, APL is very cool. If you went on the internet and said, I want to do any kind of sorting using APL, you might find possibly 1 or 2 examples on the net, but otherwise it's very cool. But it is, the weakness is a bit more fundamental. If you look at any APL's documentation, you would not see a chapter in any of the books which says APL input output. This is how you do input output in APL. Or APL error handling. What you would find is quad ELX, quad N-time, quad F-time, and so on and so forth. And that means that apart from the initial step where you type in iota 10 and you see 1 to 10 or 0 to 9 flooding into your screen, the rest of it is very, very vertical. The newcomer doesn't know how they could read a file that they can do blindfolded and half asleep in any other language, including scripting languages. So maybe APL needs to think about producing documentation so that for new entrants into the language, new entrants who are experienced in other languages, we find a bit more amenable and constructive. All APLs, even today, they remain solutions focused. In other words, the whole language, the ethos of the language is that it helps you to solve problems. I have had this discussion with Morton before, and we have disagreed quite strongly on it. And my view is that APL is solution focused, it's not expertise focused. So if you know your language and you follow the industry disciplines of how you design applications and how you document them and how you maintain them, then APL is probably the best language that you could use to develop any application. My own view is that one of the weaknesses or barriers to people working with APL is that the symbols aren't visible. But over time, it just becomes irrelevant because everybody knows what the symbols are. The other side of the argument is that the actual symbols like quad and left arrow and right arrow actually look like Greek symbols. I don't think that is a big problem. If it were, then J has been around for a long time. It would probably have superseded all languages and set the world alive. It hasn't. Because J doesn't have the APL symbol. I think I mentioned this. You have got LINQ to object, which I will be covering, LINQ to SQL, LINQ to XML, and with Framework 3.5, because after Framework 3.5 Service Pack 1, they introduced LINQ to entities. LINQ to objects is a bit of immediate interest to APL because it is basically in-memory data. Now APL doesn't have any of these data types, like list and array, list and but it does have arrays, vectors and nested arrays. And we have been using relational operators, albeit without keywords, which LINQ has, for doing this from the very first version of APL. You could go back as far as APL plus PC version 1. The idea about LINQ is that it has this got a syntax which is accused with a host language, in other words, C# or VB.NET or Visual APL. And or APL itself. I mean, if you were using C# less than or equal to, you would probably write as a left caret followed by an equal sign, but in APL you would have just one symbol before that. But there are cosmetic differences like that. SQL is not a replacement for anything. It's just a new way of talking about language features. Language features in which APL has always had and is traditionally very strong in that aspect. What LINQ does is that it offers you a new framework, a new jargon to talk about it. And maybe for APL we need to adopt that jargon and start to talk about it in the same way. Most of you who are parents would be familiar with this question. Are we there yet? The more pertinent question is, how will we know whether we are there? That is basically an overview of what I would hope to cover. I doubt I will be able to go through the whole length. But let me show you Visual APL. Index origin is 0 by default.
Is it possible to increase the font size?
Sure.
Make it bold.
That's a card.
Fine.
Doesn't work. I hope you can just about see. All of the APLs, as we know, certainly all of APL+Win is there, apart from features which don't fit into the .NET world. This is the interactive session. There's nothing there that you can save apart from the session itself. You can save the session as a log and examine it at your own leisure or recall the log. There's no square bracket display or quad display to be able to see the level of nesting. But all of the features are there. For the symbols, on right click, in this session you will have operators, and you can pick the symbols and have it type it into your session. But what is really quite nice is it gives you the keystrokes that are necessary to get the thing into your session. This applies to APL+Win keyboard. For some reason, this always happens, and I'm not sure why. But what it has done is actually created abc.xml. And what we have is the rendering. If you look at ABC, it had Monday, Tuesday, and then 0 to 5. This is another ABC. Maybe it will be This is, I already had an ABC, and currently Visual APL doesn't overwrite it. So we have exactly the same information. If I change that to 10 and to 20, ABC came from, XX came from ABC. I just changed the values in XX, and the values have now been fixed in the workspace. I have some pre-work examples. I think I mentioned the ability to be able to mix C# code with APL, Visual APL code. This is an example of it. This is using the system-based class. If you look at the heading, it's virtually exactly as you would recognize an APL function to be, only you have got the word function there. The opening and closing braces define the scope of anything that is within it. So this is using system input output directory, create directory, and it takes R as the argument. And finally, it returns a boolean, which is 0 or 1, true or false, to confirm whether the directory has been created. And this is the ABC that confused the session earlier on. We're back into the interactive mode. Confirmation that the script has been updated. That tells me that it's just creating this folder. Good. You can see that it all works. The idea is that in the same APL function, we could have C# code or APL+, Visual APL code.
But what's the purpose of the del symbol at the beginning of a line? Or put it differently, why do you need both del and function of that line?
Del starts the definition of the function. traditionally appear. So if you wanted to use quad def, for instance, you start with the very first character in the string that would be the argument of quad def would be del. The alternative to function is this symbol, which I have, which is an alt F. Depending on how you use Visual APL, whether you use it as a self-contained project, as a means of constructing an ActiveX or overlay object, or as a class, as a .NET class library, you will do that. What I would recommend is a lot of the questions would be answered in this document. I don't know, but is this tutorial included on the CD?
It's not on the CD, but these are some of the documents yesterday that I referred to on the Visual APL forum. There are tutorials, there are articles like this, there's the step-by-step instruction for the demo I showed. It's all available on the Visual APL forum, and you have the web address for that.
There's a section in here which tells you everything you might want to know about the new ways you can define functions. If you wanted to, you could restrict yourself to exactly the way APL+Win works, but it's a bit more versatile. For instance, you could have this method, for instance, which in C# terms they call overloading. So you could call this function, for instance, fndef, which is defined, the arguments are defined as follows. This is one signature. This is the term for what we call balance in APL. You could call it with one argument, two arguments, three arguments, or four arguments, depending on how the function is defined. So, perhaps this is a better document that I could explain it, for you to get the answers from. If you haven't got it on your CD, then I have it on this PC. If by all means, I can let you have a copy. It's also available on the APL 2000 website.
AJ, on that function signature that Bob was just asking about, which began Del saying was a signed function, is there anything that could follow the assignment error other than the word function?
Yes. You don't have to have an assignment function. This is a problem with that of demos. They don't work. Instead of the arrow function, you could have the word return, which is a C# word, and it will return a value. That is also defined in the document that I just referred to.
I get that, actually. My question is specifically about the function signature.
Yes.
Could you have a word like operator, for example?
No, it has to be function.
And why does it need to be?
You have first the scope of it, public or private. Then you have the attribute, whether it's static, boolean, or followed by the function, followed by the argument.
And there are no user defined operators.
You can. I haven't got any examples, but you can define your own operators, much as you could with C#. This is what LINQ is all about.
APL operators. User defined
Visual
operators.
APL doesn't have any. I don't think it's got facilities for user defined operators. But I could be wrong. I haven't encountered it.
I don't think APL stuff.
No, APL+Win doesn't have it.
AJ, what would happen if you go back to that screen? What I think the question people are asking is, what would happen if you the word function to the line. So, if you just highlighted that and deleted it, would it still work?
You can see in the document, you don't need the function.
Right.
It depends on the scope. If you're using it purely as APL, then you wouldn't need the word function. If you were using it for as a .NET class library, then you would. Okay, let me show you something else. Say you wanted to know the processes that were running. This list, for instance. One of the advantages with .NET is that a lot of things which I struggle with APL itself are quite easy. As with APL, if you type an expression in the immediate window, the result comes back as soon as the expression is entered. In this script, what we have is an instruction to show a message and for the processes to come through. So this bit is not encapsulated in any function. So you will expect the feedback to come through immediately. And you can see that the message has come through. Enumerate all processes is a caption. In the session window is the message. And you should see the messages coming through. Print, unlike APL+Win, if you just had an expression like 5 on line 5 of your function, and you work in the runtime session, 5 will be echoed into your immediate window session. Visual APL, if you had that, nothing will happen. You either need to expressly assign the 5 to apply, or you use the word print. And that's listed, as you can see the timestamp. That's listed all the functions. And it's also created the G's for global. It's listed 66 functions, 66 processes that are running on the computer. The other thing was list processes. If you go back to this, this is encapsulated in the function. It's exactly the same code as before. And that does exactly the same thing, but inside the function. This script illustrates how compatible Visual APL. Remember I mentioned derived types and loose typing. This expression is creating an APL variable much as you would in any APL. This is the variable being created with the same values, but with a C# syntax. So that is it's a type integer, it's a vector, and that is just the way that the language specifies it. So basically the last word in the name indicates which is which, APL or C#. And they have exactly the same value. Do they match? And they do. array operations possible. Obviously, you would expect it to be possible in the APL creation. What about the C# one? And what about other operations? So it's exactly the same values created in a very different way. And there are other examples of doing similar thing with different types of values. One thing which is surprising is that APL is very strong with nested arrays. C# calls it jagged arrays. And every language that I know has got jagged arrays, but nobody talks about it, nobody uses it. Even scripting languages like VBScript, which you just type into Notepad, you can create jagged arrays, but hardly anybody uses it. In APL, it's one of its major strengths. Everybody uses it. And this creates the same sort of structure using the keyword here is object. APL doesn't need any quantification, it just creates the same value. So if you look at int vector CS,
AJ, each line of this script has to end with a semicolon.
I tend to put semicolon in because usually I program in C# and C# does need it. With Visual APL it's optional. You can have it on your own. You don't have to have it. What it does mean is that semicolon basically indicates the end of the statement. The statement itself could span several lines. With APL, if I were to have how many statement delimiters does APL have? It does have two. Carriage return is one of them, and diamond is the other one. With Visual APL, carriage return doesn't mean anything, except in the immediate session where it does, it signals it to execute it. In code, carriage return doesn't mean anything. It will carry on until it hits a semicolon, or give you an error. In C#, you could have A on one line plus on another, B on another, followed by semicolon on the fourth.
White space.
This is probably answers the question, does it have to have the word function in it? So this is defining a very simple function, area of the circle. This is purely for APL, and it's defining in the root class, if you like. This one creates, in the same script, this goes in the root class, this goes into a class by my first name, this goes into a class by my second name. This function actually calls a function here. If you're able to use the add function, we basically add two numbers together.
AJ, got 2 or 3 minutes left.
Sorry?
Got 2 or 3 minutes left.
Okay. You get the gist of the immediate session in Visual APL and writing about classes. I have still got all of this to cover, but I doubt that I will have time to cover. Let me show you something about APL+Win. One of the features of APL+Win regarding Win32 APIs is that you can define it on the fly, and it's workspace independent. You don't have to have it part any function. The other strength that it has is that some API calls have got fallback functions, and you can code that in APL the API call will call another function in your workspace and return different results. Let me show you. This basically lists all the X's that are running on this machine. This is a callback function. If I run the same function again, I get a different type of answer. That's because the callback function is doing something else. If you have an existing Excel session and you want to get hold of it as the one that you want to work for as a COM server, you have so how did that happen? Because ordinarily you can't. If APL+Win has got something called redirection, you could either use this kind of syntax or this syntax to be able to get the values. I don't have enough time to cover the whole lot, but this is really quite interesting, and it is covered in the APL+, the APL, the next generation document.
We'll do need to draw a line under it there, but maybe you will sit down to people in the workshop later on and maybe look
Yeah.
over your shoulder.
There is just one other thing that I want to show. This is a C# application, which is a Windows application. And what I can do from here is load an APL+Win application, which it has done. Index origin is 1 in there. I could query, and index origin is 1, it confirms it and resets it to 0. And index origin is now 0. This is C# talking to what I described as a legacy application. Let me load the workspace, it's just loaded a workspace in there. And it's got a function called myFN. That's the answer, and it will take this 10 as an argument and call the same function and gives you the result of the same result. So this is another way, although it's in what I described as the past and the present, depending on how long you do the past and the present. APL+Win is still deployable because of this ActiveX interface, which is very, very good. It doesn't have strong data typing. It will work with .NET. Just one more thing before I finish. Very quickly. These are the documents that you will find. It's got 26 pages. This is what Microsoft have called their one-on-one LINQ examples. This is my write-up with APL+Win.
Are those documents on the CD?
On the CD, yes. This is how Microsoft describes the sample. So you would remember I mentioned partitioning operators, take simple, or take lesser, skip simple, and things like that. They're all coded. They are in this workspace, and you have all the LINQ examples in there. And the very last sentence is, this is a document that describes how you would use the C# user control inside APL+Win. If you're skeptical about user controls, all the grid objects that you use in any of the APLs they are like user control. They are specifically written to deliver certain type of functionality, usually array facilities, and you can now use C# to build your own as you see fit.
Okay, let's stop there, I'm afraid. Thank you for that.